She had rainbow hair, a voice that could shatter glass, and an attitude that could destroy careers. Cyndi Lauper wasn't just the quirky pop star who wanted girls to have fun. She was a street fighter from Queens who never forgot where she came from, and she had some serious problems with the biggest names in music.
As a young kid, like a teenager, reading stories all the time in the paper of...
Welcome to another episode of Offstage Tales, where today we're uncovering the explosive feuds of Cyndi Lauper and the 6 bands that made her absolutely furious.
And then I met the Beatles and the Supremes, and, I had my music advanced.
The working-class hero behind hits like Time After Time and True Colors was known for one thing above all else: keeping it real. And when other artists didn't measure up to her standards, she let them know about it. "I don't care how famous you are," Lauper once told a reporter in 1985. "If you're fake, I'm going to call you out on it." And trust us, she meant every word. From screaming matches backstage to brutal public interviews, Lauper's battles with these musicians weren't just about music. They were about authenticity, respect, and who deserved to be on top. Some of these fights happened in front of millions on live TV. Others exploded behind closed doors, but all of them showed just how fierce this colorful pop star could really be. So put on your brightest colors and get ready for some shocking revelations, because when Cyndi Lauper went to war, nobody was safe. 6. Hall and Oates. Launching our countdown at number 6 is a feud that exposed the brutal class divide in American pop music, Hall and Oates. Cyndi Lauper's resentment toward the Philadelphia duo wasn't about their harmonies. It was about their effortless acceptance in a world where she had to fight tooth and nail for recognition.
We're so related to each other, so integral. They crossed aisles all the...
The animosity reportedly began in 1983, when both acts were climbing the charts through vastly different journeys. According to former Epic Records executive Larkin Arnold, Lauper once heard "Man-Eater" on the radio and told her band, "Those guys glide through doors that slam shut in my face. It must be nice to have that kind of smooth privilege." What ate at Lauper wasn't their musical talent, but their seemingly frictionless path to stardom. While Lauper had scraped by in dingy New York clubs and battled industry sexism, Hall and Oates was achieving massive success with what Lauper reportedly called rich boy soul music and passion-free professionalism for people who don't want to feel anything real. "Some artists earn their stripes, others get them gift-wrapped," Lauper told Rolling Stone in 1984 in what many interpreted as a pointed jab at the duo's polished trajectory. The tension peaked when both acts were competing for Grammy nominations. At a 1984 industry mixer, witnesses claim Lauper refused Daryl Hall's invitation to collaborate, later telling her manager, "I don't make music with people who've never struggled for anything." Hall seemed puzzled by Lauper's coldness, later calling her unnecessarily hostile in interviews. But for Lauper, Hall and Oates represented everything she despised about the music business. Effortless privilege masquerading as artistry, smooth sailing mistaken for genuine achievement, and success without sacrifice. 5. Tina Turner. At number 5, we encounter a generational collision that rocked the female powerhouse hierarchy, Tina Turner. Lauper's frustration with the legendary soul survivor wasn't about respect. It was about media attention and the industry's obsession with comeback narratives overshadowing fresh talent. The friction reportedly ignited in 1984 when Turner's Private Dancer dominated headlines just as Lauper was establishing herself. According to former MTV executive Les Garland, Lauper once watched Turner's comeback coverage and told him, "She gets praised for surviving while we get criticized for trying to arrive. Where's the fairness in that?"
A blow-up doll? What was she gonna do? I thought, I don't know, the dog was having issues,
What rankled Lauper wasn't Turner's talent, but the media's priorities. While Lauper was pioneering new sounds and challenging social norms, Turner was receiving overwhelming praise for what Lauper reportedly called recycled greatness and nostalgia marketed as innovation. Veterans get standing ovations for showing up, newcomers get dissected for breathing, Lauper told Spin magazine in 1985, in what insiders recognized as frustration with generational bias. The rivalry intensified when both women were competing for Comeback of the Year narratives. At a 1985 awards ceremony, witnesses claim Lauper avoided Turner's backstage area, later telling journalists, "I'm not here to bow down to yesterday's queens." Turner seemed unaware of Lauper's resentment, later praising her unique energy in interviews. But for Lauper, Turner represented the industry's backwards priorities, celebrating past glories while ignoring present innovation, rewarding survival over creativity, and forcing emerging artists to compete with legends instead of being judged on their own revolutionary merits. 4. Blondie. At number 4, we dive into a vicious New York turf war that divided punk royalty, Blondie. Lauper's hostility toward Debbie Harry and company wasn't about musical differences, it was about authenticity, street credibility, and who truly earned their punk rock stripes. The conflict reportedly began in the late 1970s, when both artists were navigating Manhattan's underground scene through different approaches. According to former CBGB bartender Hilly Crystal, Lauper once watched Blondie perform and told fellow musicians, "She's playing punk princess while the rest of us are actually living it. There's a difference between visiting the scene and surviving it." What infuriated Lauper wasn't Harry's success, but her perceived distance from real struggle.
Blondie, and I love her, and I love the band, and it was very influential.
While Lauper had genuinely lived the broke artist lifestyle, Blondie was achieving mainstream breakthrough with what Lauper reportedly called sanitized rebellion and punk light for people scared of actual danger. Real punk doesn't come with perfect makeup and manufactured attitude, Lauper told Village Voice in 1982, in what many interpreted as a direct challenge to Harry's polished punk persona. The rivalry exploded when both acts were being labeled as New York punk pioneers. At a 1983 downtown club, witnesses claim Lauper stormed out during Blondie's set, later telling venue staff, "I won't watch punk being turned into a fashion statement." Harry seemed oblivious to Lauper's anger, later calling her talented but intense in interviews. But for Lauper, Blondie represented punk's commercialization, transforming genuine underground culture into marketable rebellion, replacing authentic grit with calculated edge and stealing credibility from artists who actually lived the lifestyle. 3. Pat Benatar. Number 3 brings us to an explosive vocal powerhouse collision, Pat Benatar. Lauper's contempt for the rock goddess wasn't about range or technique, it was about manufactured toughness versus genuine resilience in the brutal landscape of female rock stardom. The feud reportedly erupted in 1983 when both singers were being positioned as rock's female warriors through dramatically different personas. According to former Chrysalis Records executive Terry Ellis, Lauper once heard "Love is a battlefield" and told him, "She's playing dress-up soldier while real women are fighting actual wars." That costume doesn't fool anyone who's lived through real battles. What enraged Lauper wasn't Benatar's vocal prowess, but her constructed image. While Lauper had clawed her way through genuine hardship and industry sexism, Benatar was achieving rock credibility with what Lauper reportedly called boardroom-approved rebellion and aggressive posturing designed by male executives. Toughness isn't a leather jacket and choreographed attitude. It's surviving when everything's against you, Lauper told Cream magazine in 1984, in what insiders recognized as a devastating critique of Benatar's manufactured edge. The rivalry reached boiling point when both artists were competing for female rock legitimacy. At a 1984 music industry convention, witnesses claim Lauper confronted Benatar directly, allegedly saying, "Your tough girl act insults every woman who's actually fought for something." Benatar seemed stunned by Lauper's aggression, later calling her unnecessarily combative in interviews. But for Lauper, Benatar represented everything wrong with female rock representation, replacing authentic struggle with theatrical aggression, genuine empowerment with calculated rebellion, and real strength with packaged attitude. 2. The Go-Go's. At number 2, we encounter Lauper's most controversial musical competence attack, the Go-Go's. This wasn't about sisterhood or female solidarity, it was a brutal questioning of instrumental ability and whether collective girl power could compensate for individual musical shortcomings. The conflict reportedly began in 1982 when both acts were being celebrated as groundbreaking female forces through vastly different approaches. According to former IRS Records producer Richard Gotterer, Lauper once watched the Go-Go's perform and told him, "They can barely play their instruments, but get praise because they're women together. That's not empowerment, that's lowered expectations." What triggered Lauper wasn't their success, but their musical foundation. While Lauper had developed serious vocal and performance skills through years of training, the Go-Go's was achieving critical acclaim with what Lauper reportedly called amateur hour disguised as female empowerment, and novelty act mistaken for musical revolution. "Being women doesn't excuse being mediocre," Lauper told Guitar World in 1984, in what many interpreted as her most brutal assessment of female band standards. The rivalry intensified when both acts were being compared as female music pioneers. At a 1983 industry showcase, witnesses claim Lauper refused to appear on the same bill as the Go-Go's, later telling promoters, "I won't legitimize the idea that women don't need to be excellent musicians." Belinda Carlisle seemed hurt by Lauper's dismissal, later calling her elitist and unsupportive in interviews. But for Lauper, the Go-Go's represented a dangerous precedent, accepting lower musical standards for women, celebrating collective mediocrity over individual excellence, and undermining serious female artists through novelty success. 1. Madonna. And finally, at number 1, we reach the most explosive revelation of all, Madonna. Yes, the Material Girl reportedly earned Cyndi Lauper's ultimate fury in what became the most ideologically vicious female rivalry of the 1980s. The war reportedly began in 1984 when both artists were revolutionizing female pop through completely opposite philosophies.
It was a mistake not to invite Madonna, but they chose me to sing that spot.
According to former Warner Brothers executive Seymour Stein, Lauper once watched Madonna's Like a Virgin video and told him, "She's turned female empowerment into a striptease. Everything I've fought for, she's destroying with calculated controversy." What horrified Lauper wasn't Madonna's ambition, but her methods. While Lauper had challenged gender norms through authentic self-expression and working-class values, Madonna was achieving global domination with what Lauper reportedly called fake liberation designed by focus groups and empowerment that actually serves male fantasies. So there you have it. Even rainbow warriors have their sworn enemies. Was Cyndi Lauper protecting working-class authenticity or just fiercely territorial? Which battle shocked you most? Slam that subscribe button, share your reactions below, and hit the bell for more explosive music feuds.